In the frozen dawn of the Viking Age, where gods were worshipped through fire and blood, and honor was defended with steel, death was not a quiet visitor. It was a spectacle carved into legend. Some died in battle. Others died in ways so horrifying, so brutal, that even the Viking sagas trembled as they recorded them. Today, we descend into the darkest corners of Norse history and face the deaths that shook an entire civilization. The Viking Age is often romanticized. Brave warriors, longships cutting through icy seas, and distant kingdoms drenched in gold. But the real Viking world was built not only on glory, but on terror. And behind every saga, there was a darker truth waiting to surface. In this world, death was as much a message as it was a punishment. Among the most feared stories of this era is the death of Ragnar Lodbrok, a name that still echoes across Scandinavia like distant thunder. Ragnar was a warrior, a raider, a king, and a man whose legend grew so immense that even his death became myth. But beneath the layers of saga, a chilling core remains. Ragnar's final journey began with a failed attack on Northumbria, deep in northern England. His shipwrecked army fell, and he was captured by King Edmund, a ruler who had long waited for vengeance. Ragnar, stripped of his weapons, his armor, and the myth that had protected him for years, was dragged to a deep pit beneath the earth. Inside, the pit writhed with venomous serpents. Their bodies coiled around one another like living darkness. According to the oldest accounts, Ragnar was lowered into the pit alive. The snakes sank their fangs into his skin, one after another. The venom acted slowly. Neurotoxins dulled his breath. Hemotoxins tore through his muscles. The agony must have lasted hours. But Ragnar, the warrior of half a continent, refused to cry out. Even in torment, he clung to the Viking belief that suffering earned honor. His final words, whether real or born of legend, carried the promise of vengeance. How the little piglets would grunt if they knew how the old boar suffers. Those piglets were his sons. And when they heard of his death, they did not grunt, they roared. The great heathen army swept across England, determined to repay Ella not with war, but with ritual. When Ella was captured, his fate became one of the most debated and feared punishments in Viking lore: the Blood Eagle. Whether literal or symbolic, the message was unmistakable. The condemned man was laid face down. His ribs were split open from the spine. One by one, the bones were cracked outward, spreading like wings. In the sagas, it is said that Ragnar's sons performed the ritual on Ella, carving an eagle into his back as a tribute to Odin and a warning to every king who dared challenge them. Some historians question whether the blood eagle was physically possible. Others argue it was a metaphor for brutal execution. But one fact remains: the Vikings believed fear was the strongest weapon a warrior could wield, and they used it without hesitation. But the cruelty of the age was not limited to the battlefield. Far from Scandinavian shores, on a quiet cliff overlooking the North Sea, stood St. Æbbe's monastery in Coldingham, a sanctuary for women who dedicated their lives to prayer. In the year 870, the women heard the distant echo of oars. The Vikings were coming. They knew what happened to women captured in coastal raids: enslavement, forced concubinage. And so, in a moment of unimaginable desperation, the abbess urged the nuns to disfigure themselves, to cut their noses and lips so the raiders would have no desire to take them. When the Vikings arrived and found the women bloodied but alive, they responded with horrifying coldness. They barred the doors and set the monastery on fire. The women who had sought to escape one fate met another, burned alive inside the house of their god. But perhaps the most chilling Viking death was that of King Edmund of East Anglia, a devout Christian king who refused to abandon his faith to save his life. When captured by the army of Ivar the Boneless, he was tied to a tree and whipped. Then the archers took aim, not to kill but to torture. Their arrows pierced his body one by one, avoiding the heart, the lungs, the neck. The sagas say he looked like a hedgehog, bristling with arrows. When his strength failed, the Vikings cut off his head and tossed it into the forest to deny him burial. But Edmund's followers searched for the head and, according to legend, found it guarded by a wolf. His martyrdom became a symbol not only of faith, but of the terrifying reality of Viking justice. From snake pits, to ritual mutilations, from burning sanctuaries to execution by torture. These deaths were not random acts of cruelty. They were weapons, designed to terrorize kingdoms, crush resistance, and carve fear into memory. The Viking Age was not merely an age of warriors, it was an age of messages. Every execution was a warning. Every ritual killing was a declaration. And every death described in the sagas reshaped the political map of Europe. History remembers the Vikings not just for their ships or their swords, but for the shadows they left behind. Shadows that still stretch across modern imagination. Thanks for watching. If you believe history still speaks, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.